Okay, so this will be the last video of today. I'm going to do some more tomorrow. Okay, so that way you don't have to see the same terrible shirt, bad hair, all that stuff. But I wanted to finish up with the pathos, okay? The emotional appeal. The emotional appeal it's super effective when done correctly, but there's lots of ways that you can mess it up. You don't want to base your entire argumentative essay on the emotional appeal. You don't want to base everything just on that. You have to have some type of logic. You have to have some type of ethics. The pathos is really good in sealing the deal. You've made them think you've got them here. You've made them think the way that you think. You've kind of got them in your ethics because they think that you're objective. But now you got to get them here. You got to get them in the heart. Got to pull those heartstrings. Maybe cause a tear in their eye. Maybe something like that. It's really effective at the close of an essay, a persuasive essay. Sometimes it can be very effective at the very beginning as well. I do not recommend using the pathos in as a method for every single argument in an essay. I would pick one or the other. I would pick logos, ethos, or pathos per argument, except for one or two. And I may use ethos and logos a couple of times, or something like that, and then save pathos no more than twice in a paper, unless you're doing multiple lengths, like 20 pages or more. I would try to keep it 10 pages and under. I'd try to keep it to two max, probably just one, particularly for our paper that's only 3 to 5 pages. Okay. So, what exactly is the pathos, the emotional appeal? Usually it's the telling of an analogy that fits the topic that you have, that explains it, but also yanks on the heartstrings of the audience and makes them want to act, makes them want to do that call to the question that we talked about in the logos. Okay? So, it's usually a story from your own personal experience or a family member's or a friend, but you can also find stuff. If you do find a story, please cite it. Let me tell you a good example of this. This happened to me back in the day. I was in debate. I was a state debater in school. This was back in the 90s. And later on, I became a debate coach and took several teams to state. But the debate has changed a lot. If you've been in cross-examination or Lincoln Douglas debate in school within the last 10 years or 15 years, it is not like it was in the 90s, okay? It is a lot more complex. It's a lot more like college debate was. I mean, I like it better, actually, because you have critiques and topicalities and disadvantages, and you have all these things that you can run now that we didn't have back in the 90s. But here's what we did have back in the 90s. We didn't have to spread, which is speed read, and we got to make some really good use of logos, ethos, pathos. So let me tell you a quick story here. I was in debate my freshman year. We finished third, and they only took the first team, the top team, to state. So we missed state. The second year, we finished second, but they took the top two teams, so we got to go. We didn't do very well at all. Third year, there were so few teams that they were only taking the top team again, and we thought for sure we had this. We were going up against a team that had a speaker on it. Their main person had been in public speaking against me. I did not know this at the time. She told me later. Since 5th grade, we had been in oral reading against each other. In 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I'd always beaten her. We beat her in debate. She finished like last. First year, she finished second to last second year, and she was in the final round third year against me, and she had this huge vendetta against me. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know who this person was. So that year, we were debating nationalized health care. Okay, so this is how long nationalized health care, Medicare for all, whatever you want to call it, has been in the public spotlight. I mean, this is the early 90s, okay? Bill Clinton was just elected president. So we were discussing this, we were debating it, and my team, we drew the negative. Now, the negative means that we have to defend the status quo. We have to defend the present system. And her team was defending nationalized health care. Okay? And the way that you determine this, you don't get to pick or whatever in debate. You basically flip a coin, and whatever side it heads, you take the affirmative, tails, you take the negative, and we got the negative. Okay? So that's just kind of how it is. So you had to be able to debate both sides at any moment. Like walk in, flip a coin, and then you have to go. So that's what we did. We accepted this, and I was the last negative speaker. In the affirmative, the people arguing for change always get the last speech. They always get the first speech and the last speech, and then there's a segment in there where the negative, defending the status quo, gets 2 speeches in a row. And I was the last negative, and I gave a pretty good 4 or 5 minute speech. And I mean, it was solid. It wasn't my best speech in the world, but it was good. It was good enough to win. Very logos based. I mean, here's my opinion of authority. Here's my reason behind it. Here's my established truth. Here's my statistic. Here, I was spot on. Bam, 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 bam. Logos, 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 logos. And then she got up and she had this huge stack of papers and she set it on the desk and she said, "Judge, I have evidence to refute every single thing, every single argument that was made against me, but I don't think that's an effective use of our time. So let me tell you a quick story. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to imagine. There's a young couple just down the road, live out in the country. They've been high school sweethearts since 8th grade, dated all throughout high school. All they've ever wanted to do was graduate high school, get a good job in town, buy a little plot of land, and be married and raise a family. These aren't incredibly ambitious people. They're not trying to go to college. They're not trying to change the world. They just want to be a part of their community. Upon graduation, that weekend became one of the greatest weekends of their lives whenever the man finally proposed to his girlfriend and she accepted. They were married at the end of the summer very quickly. And they were ecstatic at Halloween when they discovered that they were expecting their first child. The husband was over the moon. He had just gotten a job working for the local electric company. He was a linesman, and he would work on the lines and repair and hook up and disconnect electricity. He was very good at that. She had gotten a job working as a receptionist at the local dentist office. Their parents, as a wedding present, had gifted them a little bit of land, and the other set of parents had given them a little trailer house. And they had a few cows, and they had their home place where they were going to build their house and build their lives. But that started to change 6 months into the pregnancy. That's when the wife was told that this was a high-risk pregnancy, that she needed to go on immediate bed rest, that there were lots of complications. Of course, her dentist office doctor gave her some time off. The husband took as much time off as he could to help his wife during this time period. It was very trying. She couldn't leave the house. She was stuck in bed. She couldn't do anything during that time period for risk of harming the child. And that's really all they wanted, was to have this child and have a life where they could enjoy this time that they have together. As it goes, the pregnancy becomes more and more high risk, to where eventually the doctor actually has to call them and say, "No, we have to take the child now. I know that this is premature. This is 2 months premature, and this child may not survive, but there's no choice. We have to have this child now or we're going to lose you both. The wife goes in scared. The husband goes in scared. They do the procedure. They take the child as a preemie. The child is very sickly, not fully developed. They put this tiny, tiny child into infant ICU. The doctors and the nurses have to take care of this child, and the mom doesn't even get to hold her for just even a moment. The dad cries the day that he has to go back to work and leave the child still at the hospital. The mom refused to leave. Even when she was dismissed, she couldn't leave her child. She would just stay and watch. This went on for months as this child was cared for and brought up and grew and developed right in front of their eyes in the infant ICU. It was one of the greatest moments of her life whenever she got to hold her child. It was one of the greatest moments of his life when after 2.5 months they got to take that child home and put that child in their nursery for her at their house. But then the problem started. Because she had missed so much work, she had lost her job with the dentist. Because he had missed so much work, his hours had been cut with the power company. And then the bills started coming in. 2.5 months in an infant ICU is not cheap. Doctors, nurses, medicine, scans, everything started to hit. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt that they would never be able to pay. And this is the 90s, so there is no medical bankruptcy. There are no payment plans. They ended up being sued by the creditors. They lost their house. They lost their land. They lost their car. And they had to move back in with her mom. It took 7 years for them to get another piece of land in the house. 7 years to rebuild their lives, all because they just wanted to love their baby. Because they wanted their baby to be safe and healthy. Then she turned to the judge and she said, I am so glad my parents did that for me so that I can stand here before you today and tell you why we need health care for all. And then she went and sat down. And the judges were crying because she told it better than I did. They voted for her, and I lost. Now, here's the problem with the ethos of that, and that's that I actually knew this person a little bit, having talked to her before the debate round, and I knew that the story was not true and that her parents were actually lawyers. But that's okay. She used it. She used Pathos. She won the debate. They went to state. I did not. The next year, we were debating trade policy with China, and I was the affirmative that we should change, and she was the negative. And that year, she got up, and she began to tell a story, same thing. I have the evidence to refute all these arguments, but let me tell you a story. And she starts talking about the abuse of women in China, which, by the way, is real, and it was a real problem in the 90s. There has been some changes since then, but it was a real problem. But that time I was ready for it. So before she could even sit down after she finished her speech, I got up and I just started clapping. I just started applauding. You know, the slow clap? Started doing that as I was walking up. Had a stack of papers. I plopped them down on the desk very dramatically. And I turned and I looked right at her. Well, the back of her. She's walking away. And I said, you know, if this was one act play, that deserved to win. If this was made up monologues, she deserves to win. But I don't have to make up a story. I don't have to try to pull at your heartstrings because I have the truth and the facts. Fact number 1, and I read my quote. Fact number 2, and I read my quote. Fact number 3, and I read my quote. Fact number 4, and I kept going, and every single time I would say, this is truth, that's fiction. By the end of my speech, the judges were not crying, but she was. She was so mad at me. But we won, and I went to state, okay? So, and she did not, and she still hasn't forgiven me for this. So the point of this is that if you use pathos correctly, it is really effective. If you give the opposition time to come back, logos will destroy your pathos, okay? You have to be careful with how and where you use it, all right? So at the end of a essay or at the very beginning of an essay, either one, but realize that it should be in addition to support your logos and your ethos, okay? So that's kind of the best example of pathos I can give you. And this is what I'm going to put up today. So I think this is enough for today. We need to start looking at all this stuff. We're going to do a lesson on fallacies again soon. So check that out. I think in Blackboard I have fallacies before this. But we need to be looking at it all, okay, all together to kind of understand how one goes into the other one. So, and they're really together, all right? So I appreciate your time. Hope you enjoyed that. And we will come back and talk again tomorrow. Have a good day.